Good morning. Uh, Good morning. I just got the text from the boss to get up here and introduce myself to you, everyone. My name is Perzinski. I'm an assistant lacrosse coach at the University of Richmond, just about 15 miles away from here. And I'm very happy to be standing in front of you all. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Um, Recruiting. Well, first of all, I was very lucky. I'm glad to be speaking in front of you today and at this event. I think it's very rare these days that you go to an event where recruiting is going on, but equally and probably more important, there's coaching going on and there's education going on. We will get into recruiting and how this all relates, but I believe right now lacrosse is probably overplayed and underpracticed. So at an event like you're sitting at now, that you have a coaches that's telling you what to do, maybe telling you how to hold a stick a little bit differently than when you would just go play 6 games in 2 days, I think there's value there. I think having, a doctor from Duke University, there's value there. There's education there. You're now dropping off to an assistant lacrosse coach, so it might I have some work to do, but thank you for the opportunity of having me speak. Recruiting. On the itinerary, I read recruiting and I think, well, where do you start? Okay. More times than not, all the time, you hear, what does my son or daughter need to do to be viewed by your institution or to get recruited by your institution? I always answer back, I put the onus on the family and the player. What institution do you want to go to? Okay. When the recruiting process is athlete driven, I think and I believe, and I think what we're seeing nowadays with the earlier recruiting, the experience of a 4-year college experience is much greater, and it goes beyond the 4-year recruiting process. Let me backtrack. I get a lot of emails from families saying, Coach, I'm really interested in the University of Richmond, and I can't wait to study naval engineering. University of Richmond does not offer naval engineering. So, I like to put the conversation back in that of the family, as that when you're going through this college search process, that you take ownership of it and find a school that's going to have the things of your interest at this time. Those interests can change. But when you make it family and student driven, the search process, I think, can take stress out of the way of the mom and the dad and the student. Okay, and we're looking at a greater projection of what you're going to do over 4 years and what you're going to do when you get out of school, okay? It's amazing to me right now that more and more emails come in and they're just, I want to sign up at whatever event I can just to get seen. The process should not be driven like that. The process is not a 4-year, this is for the kids, the young men and women in the room. The process is not a 4-year process with the lacrosse carrot or the lacrosse ball, hanging in front of your nose, because that's what you see every day. Because that's what you see on Twitter, that every 2 minutes somebody committed to X school. Well, guess what? That tweet goes away after 30 seconds, okay? And you got to think about your college search process 4 years in and ultimately 40 years in. I had a conversation with a young man yesterday, and I say this to every young man I recruit at the University of Richmond, that you're going to have an unbelievable experience playing college lacrosse wherever you decide to go. But when you graduate, you're going to have a diploma from that institution that's going to hang up in your office or in your family's, somewhere in your household. And that's a 40-year diploma and not a 4-year lacrosse experience, okay? So it's tough to be 16 and 17 and hear that. I understand. I was like that at one point. All I thought about, back then it was hard letters. I would get the letter in the mail. I'm like, it's all we wanted to talk about at the lunch table at Hereford High School up in Baltimore County, Maryland. I was like, what letter did you get today? All right. Do not live for the 30-second tweet. Think about what you want over your 4-year experience as a student athlete. Student athlete. I say student for a really specific reason. When it comes to recruiting process for us, I feel, and we believe as a staff feel, that if I have John that's excited to go to his 10 a.m. economics class, okay, maybe after a Wednesday night game and it's a Thursday, he's going to be jacked up to go play lacrosse from 2 to 4 and do something he loves. So I'm going to continue to say student-driven and academic-driven. Now, recruiting all these different types of schools in the country. Every school has its own timeline. Every student has their own timeline, okay? I can't speak for all the other 69 Division I institutions in the country, but from the University of Richmond's perspective, we still have half of a 2017 class to fill. We have half of a 2018 class to fill, and we've had 2 2019 step on campus. Every institution has its own recruiting timeline specific to that coaching philosophy or driven through the academic side of things. Great, you're a freshman, you want to come to University of Richmond, it's been your number one choice since you were 5 years old. You have not taken a test. I'm sorry, there's an ACT or an SAT score component that is going to help you decide what the best course of an academic institution will be over your 4 years. So, the academic institution, just like every school has a different process and a different timeline, every student, you're going to have schools that you are a better fit for, understand? I went to Lynchburg College in Lynchburg, Virginia, about a couple hours west of here. It was a wonderful school for me because, I'll be honest with you, I'm coaching kids a lot smarter than I am. I could not have gotten into the University of Richmond. I need to have an application to the athletic department so you'd be able to coach the bright young man that we coach today. I found a school that was going to challenge me in a major that I was interested at Lynchburg College, and that drove my process. Where was I going to fit and be the most successful? Yes, strive for an academic institution. Maybe that's a stretch for you where you're going to be challenged, okay? But set your sights, set your goals realistic. If you are a B student and you have an 1,000 on your SAT, Harvard's not going to knock on your door. You just have to accept that reality. But there's a school for everyone from an academic standpoint, a school size standpoint, and from a curriculum standpoint of a major that you might be interested, moms and dads, and this is mainly for the kids. But you just have to believe that it's going to be out there, and when the process is student-driven, you can find those schools instead of waiting for the schools with the clipboard to catch you at the right time and then escalate the recruiting process with you. So, what do coaches look for? That was one of the headlines. I wanted to give you kind of my broad spectrum of recruiting, but what do coaches look for? I like to, on behalf of the University of Richmond, we follow a set of 3 criteria, okay? Not every one of our guys in the locker room satisfy these 3 criteria, but they have to satisfy at least one, and we feel the good ones that project the best and have the most impact on our field, they have at least 2. At University of Richmond, we look for multi-sport athletes. It breaks my heart that I hear a young man say, "Coach, I'm so stressed out about recruiting. I'm a sophomore, that I'm not going to play football or soccer this year. I'm going to focus on lacrosse." That breaks my heart because as a 15, 16-year-old young man, I think that all the different experiences that diversify you through high school, they're going to project you to be a better college lacrosse athlete when you're focused on one thing. Okay, young men, young girls in the room, I understand that it's great that if you can play lacrosse 365 days a year and that's going to make you the best well-rounded person, go do it. But for most, different experiences and different things that you put yourself through at a young age, they translate to things that you can fall back on when you are just a men's lacrosse or a women's lacrosse athlete at a Division I, II, or III institution. I know that the young man that goes to football practice in the fall and has rainy, muddy football practice with a defensive line coach maybe getting into him a little bit, is probably getting a little bit more of an experience to fall back on when he has to go to a February 12th practice for lacrosse as a college athlete and there's snow on the ground. We rely on those experiences. The multi-sport athletes is something that can diversify you as a prospect for being a college lacrosse athlete. Number 2, we at the University of Richmond look for young men from winning programs. So our culture, as a new culture, I don't know if you're familiar with our program, we just finished our 3rd season. We didn't want to be satisfied with just being a Division I institution. We wanted to find young men that could come and know what it's like to be successful. So from our standpoint, as coming from a program, it doesn't have to be the best lacrosse school, but maybe an academic rigorous institution, or you are on that soccer team that's won 3 state championships. A culture from a winning environment or a winning culture that we bring and fill our locker room with those guys. And then number 3, and this is where recruiting becomes pretty interesting with this one, we're looking for leaders amongst their group of peers. leaders amongst their group of peers. If you are an Eagle Scout, I think that is awesome. And I think it's great that you're doing an Eagle project in high school instead of going to 19 different lacrosse events. That's just my personal opinion. Those experience of you as an Eagle Scout, they're going to help you when you have to manage an entrepreneurship 404 10-page paper and present it in front of all the business professors in the building. Is going to make you be able to balance the needs and the stresses of being a Division I athlete. So, leaders amongst their group of peers. At the University of Richmond, you guys are going to laugh and think this is crazy. We call guidance counselors. You know, we call the headmaster of the Boy Scout troop. We're going to call soccer coach. The environment of club lacrosse these days is phenomenal about getting the young men and young women exposure and being able to play, 6 games in 2 days in front of over 100 coaches. We cannot, I cannot argue that the club culture is great. But that club coach, I think he has more of a financial interest in calling me to say this Johnny or Jim is the best thing since sliced bread, he's the best guy in the classroom, and you're crazy not to take him. Well, Coach X, I trust you, but I'm probably going to call the guidance counselor or the head lacrosse coach at the high school either way, because they've seen Johnny on his bad days or when he's had a bad exam test, or how does he respond. Those relationships, those experiences, we count on that a lot. Now, there's a different school for everyone, and every program has its own philosophy. At the University of Richmond, we're bringing in 8 to 10 young men a year. So, how can you diversify yourself? It's through these different experiences, okay? On my program, it says realities of recruiting. How many, I see a couple young athletes in the room, how many left-handed attackmen are sitting in the stands? 1, 2, 3, 4. Just right in front of us, 4. And most teams, the most starting lineups, have 1 left-handed attackman to start, just like a goalie or 1 face-off guy. So, and all of you guys, you wouldn't be here unless you were accomplished at some level in your athletic career to be on a showcase team and represent yourself. So, you're all good left-handed attackmen, but what is going to separate you from the guy next to you? And we at the University of Richmond and other colleagues that I've become associated with in my time as a coach at Gettysburg College and at Lynchburg College, those are the things that are going to make you stand out. Those are the things that when I walk a young man around and he says, "Oh, is this the Jepson School of Leadership Studies that I read about in a pamphlet? I've been looking forward to hearing more about this." And I'm saying, oh my gosh, that's a guy that I want to continue the conversation with because he's invested in his future. He's not waiting for someone to tell him, all the great things that's ahead of him. He's invested in his future and taken the time to spend 5 minutes on his iPad to read a little bit about the University of Richmond to make me at least a little bit more interested. Okay? What you're doing in high school is with playing multiple sports, being part of clubs and organizations, being leaders in your community, those are the things that are going to separate you through this recruiting process. But I take it a step further that you're going to need. You're going to need these experiences when you're a Division I student athlete and have time demands of lifting, of travel, of an exam schedule, meeting with professors in a small group project, okay, getting ready when you're playing against some juggernauts that are on the schedule here. And when you have 3 other left-handed attackmen on the roster already that you're competing with every day in and out of practice to be the guy that starts. Recruiting to me, it's getting bigger and bigger because there's more and more people playing, and I love to see the growth of the sport. But at the end of the day, the growth of that sport, if the process is student-driven, and now there's more people playing from all these different types of areas, the sport will grow itself, and you guys will find a place to be successful. Okay? So I want to put a little bit of the ownership again on you guys. When the process is driven by the student-athlete, when you're giving yourself experiences that not only diversify yourself amongst a group of peers that are competing with today, okay, they're not just going to help you through the recruiting process, they're going to help you become a better 4-year college athlete. And those are things that we truly harp on with every young man we sit across the table with. Those are the type of things that I like to give you to take home. Like I said, not everybody in our locker room has all 3 of those boxes checked from a recruiting perspective, but we feel that if you can do those things, you're going to project yourself further to not just have a great 4 years as a student athlete, but what you're going to do after those 4 years when that diploma is hanging out in your office and you're leaders of an organization or a family. I wanted to spend time, the second half of this, to talk about more specific questions. I was a Division III player, I was a Division III coach, and I'm coaching at the Division I level. I can talk a little bit about different philosophies and timelines of certain institutions. For instance, at the University of Richmond, it's tough to recruit somebody without a transcript or at a test score. So, okay, I'm glad I brought this up. The younger ones, the younger people, the younger families in the audience, one thing that you can help yourself when the process of the summer craziness begins, if you have a copy of your transcript or your SAT score or your incoming, that sophomore, that junior, that senior class schedule on hand, have those as an electronic document, because the first question that you're going to get from the University of Richmond, send us your transcript. So if you could have those things organized earlier through these summer processes, it helps move the conversation further with a young man. Where we, at an institution like Richmond and some other smaller higher academic schools, we will put that those transcripts and those test scores through a formula that will project you, onto where you would fall on admission scale, whether we're able to support you or not support you through admissions. So, moms and dads, that's one thing that doing your homework a little bit early can help your son or daughter when the conversation with the coach comes about. Okay, so I'm glad I brought that up. There's admissions processes at the Division III level where, they don't have a set deadline. They're rolling admission. There's different processes are part of the research process that you need to take when you're looking at schools and applying for schools. Because certain schools will have X deadlines, certain schools will have rolling admission, meaning you can apply through a calendar year. I do want to answer questions. Joel, Mr. Flanker wanted me to make sure there was a lot of time for questions. So, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So, my son is a junior.
Okay, is it 2018?
Yes. And so, but he wants to go to visit a school. Should he go and visit the athletic department? Should he make that a part of his tour?
Yes. My son is a rising junior. He's graduating from high school in 2018, and he wants to start looking at schools. Yes, we encourage to go visit all the men we recruit. We want them to visit multiple schools, but to get in front of the coach and diversify his name versus all the other names of emails, him trying to email and be proactive to see if there's a time to meet with that coach is very helpful. It's very helpful for us that when I see a young man, it's like, oh, this young man stopped by the office, or he called and he left me a voicemail, or I had 30 minutes of my day, I was able to go show him into the locker room and things like that. So if you are going to be taking tours on your own initiative, I highly encourage being proactive and reaching out to the head coach and every assistant. Some head coaches, guys, all they do is forward the emails to the assistants. So email everybody on staff and try to get some FaceTime, try to do things so that, if you're on campus, you get the maximum amount of your time and your time to spend there. But also, putting a face to a name is extremely helpful for us. When at an event yesterday, I had 75 emails, and it's tough to manage those emails while trying to evaluate the young men here. So yes, I highly encourage you meeting as many people as you can in the athletic department, but be proactive. Us coaches, we're on the road a ton, so emails well in advance to give us a warning. The drop-ins, they can get us at a bad time, and it just isn't fair to the family or isn't fair to us just to drop right into the office. That's a very good question. So one behind. Come on, I was ready to be just grilled here. Yes, sir. Film. It's a great, wonderful question. There's wonderful recruiting services out there that they make the films look unbelievable. There's some here, and having a quality film is very important. But if you're able to compile a 5-minute video on your own, and that gets a YouTube link that you can make, to the sender, that is extremely helpful for us. University of Richmond, we will ask for full game films. We will, some coaches these days, they have a huddle account or things like that where we will gain access to that young man or that coaches and watch a full game, because I've never seen a face-off guy lose a face-off in his highlight film. So we dig a little bit deeper from that film perspective. But that 4 to 5 minute highlight film that's good quality, that you see the number, that gets us interested. Okay, we look at, we can't reply. I'll explain the timeline of a communication recruiting process. But that email with the highlight film, I click. I read 3 sentences. I click within 30 seconds. I'm interested or I'm not. So the highlight film is extremely important. But then if you have access to full games, certain programs, speaking of University of Richmond specifically, full game is helpful as well. I've never seen a goalie give up a goal in a highlight film. They all look awesome. So, just those film. That's a great question about film. I brought up communication. So education. Right now, if you're a 2018, I cannot respond to your email. I cannot call you back if I miss your phone call. September 1st of this fall is when I can initiate the communication to you. Some of the younger guys that are getting recruited, how does it work a little bit? I see a young man play. His coach's contact is in his book. I reach out to that 2018's high school coach and say, Tanner looked fantastic today. I saw him have this great right to left split. It was 3 o'clock and it was hotter than heck and a lightning storm was coming and he was still playing hard. Please give Tanner my phone number and I'm available between 2 to 3 and I'd love to just see where he is in the recruiting process. That's how that communication happens for the earlier ages. And so for the 2017s, the line of communication is wide open right now. For the 2018s, it will be September 1st of this coming September when the coach can reach out to the young man. For those grades younger, there's typically a point of contact like the high school coach, like the club coach, that acts as the vehicle to help bridge the communication from coach to athlete. So, yes, sir.
There's a lot of early dependence going on nowadays, and the kids have access to that information who does get it. And if there's a kid that a lefty attacker, he's looking at certain schools and he notices the school just committed the same year lefty attackman, can they kind of force them to look down the list or continue going forward?
I'm going to repeat the question.
Should the child be asked?
Yes. The question was, with the earlier recruiting going on, and somebody that is a lefty attackman, and they commit to school X, should that deter? Correct me if I'm wrong. Should that deter the interest of the athlete to go after school X? I can't speak for every program. I would tell the young man to reach out through his coach or whatnot. Say, Coach, I've been interested. I noticed you committed. This young man who I played against, he's my same position. Are you looking to bring in 1, 2, 3 of my position? For example, I had a year of coaching at Lynchburg College where we needed to bring in 2 goalies. Not ideal, but if we did not, we would only have 2 goalies on the roster. We need to have a third. So some programs, there will be different than others. Some programs can recruit larger classes versus smaller classes. I put the ownership back on the young man. I give him a ton of credit and foresight and thinking about his future that, man, if they want to commit this young man already, well, who am I? I want to be appreciated through this recruiting process. Open the door to the communication, and I think every coach that's worth their salt is going to have that conversation with the young man and tell them, thank you, we've moved in a different direction, but we appreciate your interest. So, okay. Yes, sir.
Can you speak to the difference from your experience between the commitment to a Division III program like Gettysburg versus Richmond in terms of the time?
It's a wonderful question. I'm glad you brought it up. The question was about the difference of a Division I institution and a Division III institution on the time commitment to being a student athlete. Division I has more time. We have more access to our athletes. We have a fall season, which is 5 days a week. Then we go at university. We give our kids off a week, and then we have We have a window of opportunity to work with our guys 8 hours a week, and that's when we get them in a strength program and so on and so forth. So it actually is a full fall semester season, not as intensive with the everyday practice and everyday lift. We break that up because, in our perspective, you're getting crushed in October, November. It's going to deteriorate March and April. So now from a Division III standpoint, I can say this. I was fortunate enough to be on a staff that went to a national championship in 2015. Those hours in the weight room and hours on the track and hours on the wall were being done. There was just no coach blowing a whistle there. But at the Division I level, the NCAA gives us a certain number of days and hours to have access to our athletes, and we use those days and athletes to try to be as specific and efficient with the programs that they're in. Division III programs that are successful, Most conferences allow 16 practice days in the fall. Most coaches will go 4 or 5 weeks and break those 16 days up, and that is the Division III fall ball, if you will. We do say at the Division I level that being a student athlete at the University of Richmond can be a full-time job between the academic demands, between what you have to study outside the classroom. But I know there's so many successful Division III programs as well that those young men are doing that work or in a culture where that work is expected, and those programs has success. I will say, the NESCAC conference, they do not have a fall ball. It's for those schools that are up in the New England Small School Athletic Conference in NESCAC. So there is some difference. Yes, sir.
Where do we go to learn the rules for recruitment?
The NCAA website is pretty clear cut on certain things. If you want to get into the book and get real specific on certain things, you could, but the rules are there. The rules are on most compliance offices. If you go to the University of Richmond's website and you go on the compliance offices, we get updates as coaches because, when a rule change, we want to be on top of everything. So every school, most schools will have a compliance window when you're looking at, women's lacrosse tab, men's lacrosse tab. Athletic department, they do have compliance office and regulations there, and that could be one if you're looking at a difference of Division II or Division III or Division I school for that school in particular. So, yes, sir. Yes. The question was, how does the prospect camp that you guys, I know you get blasted with emails about every school having a prospect camp, how does that balance with the summer showcases and the fall tournaments? I think that they can complement each other. I think that if you go to an event that's been around for a while and they're advertising, the coaches that are committed to go there and play at the Brine National, the Warrior Lacrosse Invite, they're going to have 100 coaches. You're going to play 4 times in 2 days. There is a need for that helps, and your son getting seen by a variety of coaches. The prospect day is extremely useful to us as coaches because it's, again, a thing that diversifies a young man versus others. It makes us more familiar with him. We now know, John was at prospect day. This is him. My eye is going to go to him before it will go to when I sit and watch 12, 22-minute Under Armour games, 22-minute running Under Armour games. We know that young man has invested in being on campus at the University of Richmond, and we've invested time with him and we've coached him, then he kind of goes the front of the line of where how are we going to evaluate him as an athlete to be part of our class. Additionally, we use our prospect day. We coach the heck out of our guys. The games don't happen until the afternoon because the prospect day has a benefit to the college coaches on what is going to diversify this young man if he's coachable. If he's excited to receive some constructive criticism when we're going through a practice session, he might diversify himself versus the guy that's equal in talent or maybe even a little bit more in talent, but kind of a pain in the butt to deal with on the field. So, hey guys, this is a process. You're going to hate me when I tell you this. I went to one big showcase camp and one individual tournament, and that was the process for me. Then I would visit schools and meet with coaches. Now, because there's so many kids playing, whatever you can do to diversify yourself helps you get in front of those college recruiters. Now, I do not feel that you need to sign up for everything across every city in the country. I see emails, moms and dads, I don't know how you do it. I see a guy with 8 things on his recruitment list that are his summer schedule, and I know all the time and the miles and everything that you guys go to put on that. I would say be specific and be driven in your search and see if the coach that you want to be seen by is going to be at that event, or if he has been to that event in the past. Email the coaching staff if you're a rising senior and say, Coach, I'm signed up for this tournament, and I'm thinking about these 3 other ones. Is there one you recommend where I know that you will be there? And then you send that same email, the 3 other coaches, and then 3 of those coaches are going to be at this event, not this event. Now you as a family can make a more educated decision on what's going to be the best event for you to go and showcase your son's skills and assets. The prospect day, I do think I joked around with my dad on the way in here today when I was talking to him what I want to talk about. You know, if I'm lucky enough to have a family or son, we're going to go to a couple of these things, and then we're going to pick 5 schools that we really want to go to, and we're going to go to those prospect days, and that's going to drive the search. And I'm about 40 years away from that, but so that's what I joke around with my dad about when we talk about the differences of how things worked 15 years ago when I went through it to today. But that's a wonderful question. So this is fun. Keep going. I don't know when I'm getting kicked out of here, but I really enjoy this. Like I said, these events that have the education component behind it are very important. Yes, sir.
About positional diversity for attackmen. See a lot of attackmen out in college.
Positional diversity for an attackman. One thing that we look at, you know, if I were to just sit down and I didn't know who anybody was on the field, athleticism. Can this young man be comfortable in each area of the field instead of, you know, playing on this half of the lefty attack spot? So, you know, every school is different. Every program has its own philosophy. Some programs recruit to the offense that they want to run, and they will go look for the specific inside attackman that hasn't moved 5 feet off the crease his entire life but gets 100 goals a year. Some people will look for that. Other programs want to take the most athletic guys they can get, develop them into the best lacrosse players that they can be, and then build their, you know, structure of a program and their on-field team to their skill sets. So I've been on 2 types of staffs. Both are good ways to coach. They're fun ways to coach. But I personally would not limit me saying, like, okay, I'll never take a midi run. When I get to coach the 2021 Team Texas, because I can coach the younger guys here, I'm going to tell all the middies that they can play attack and all the attackmen they can play middies, because also in middle school, I don't think you need to know what position you're going to play. You know, I was a defenseman all the way up until I was an attackman until I got to high school. We had 3 kids show up to play defense at a practice, and I can't say no to anything. That's why I'm talking to you guys. So I just said, give me a defensive stick, and then the rest is history. And I had a fun career, and I've played a couple world games. And I'm very lucky I had that opportunity to do so. So this is fun. Yes, the first athlete with a question. Say that. Is it too late for what? It is not too late to start with the process with recruiting. Every school, I echo this again, every school has its own process and its own timeline. University of Richmond, we have 4 2017 commits. You can go on Ty Zander's recruiting rundown inside Lacrosse, or you can just take my word for it that we have 4 2017 commits. Yesterday, we had a 2018 on campus, and today we're having a 2017 on campus in the afternoon. So every athlete, you have a different recruiting timeline than the people next to you, and that is okay. Every school has something that they are different with the recruiting timeline. There's Division III schools that have tried to follow the early recruiting model. Good for them if it works for them. There's some that are waiting. University of Richmond is waiting to find the guys that are maybe the late bloomer that grew 6 inches in his junior year. And you know what? We have found that the young men that we've taken later in the recruiting process have had the quickest learning curve to the field. So we're maybe just be better lucky than good, but we're okay with us being a little bit slower. Other programs have had unbelievable success identifying the younger talent earlier. Every team has, and so it is not too late. I promise you, it's not too late. So, any other young men or young women, young ladies with a question? Yes, sir.
What is the difference? I mean, I kind of understand it, but you see stuff about someone giving a verbal commit versus, you know, a formal letter of intent.
Okay.
And sort of goes back to the other gentleman's question. So we'll see some of that even at this age, the 2019s and 2018s, but given a verbal. Does that mean that spot's now filled at that school, and it doesn't mean that that's a real commitment?
A verbal is a handshake. It's a gentleman's handshake. A verbal commitment when we maybe offer a young man a spot, that we will support him through admissions. That is a verbal agreement that we will support that young man through the admissions process. And it's agreement on the young man's end that he's going to do what he needs to do in the classroom and then stay committed to us as we support him through the process. It is non-binding. These verbal commitments, everything that you see online or on Twitter or on Inside Lacrosse and stuff, those are a gentleman's handshake. You're seeing nowadays a little bit more that these earlier commitments, they start to change their mind later in their career, and that verbal commitment, there's no penalty to the athlete. There's no for changing that verbal commitment. There's nothing binding. The national letter of intent, that what goes out in the fall, when you sign a national letter of intent to a school to play at a Division I program, or you sign an early decision agreement when you apply to schools that have the early decision deadlines, those are binding admissions or binding compliance national letters of intent, or admissions. Those are the ones that are binding. Verbal commitment is what is happening nowadays with the early recruiting that is non-binding. It is a gentleman's agreement. So, yes, sir.
Where have you gotten the majority of your players? Looking at them at a showcase or a tournament or through a prospect day?
Where are we looking at?
No, but where have you gotten the majority of the players on your current roster? Do you think you've seen them more at a tournament over the course of the summer? And a showcase like this, or purely through a prospect?
The question was, are we getting most of our players on our roster? Are they coming from these tournaments, or are they coming from a prospect day? It's 50-50. You know, if we have 4 members of our 2018 class committed, 2 of them, well, they were prospect day guys. They came, we're like, holy moly, we love them. Watched his high school videos, did all of our homework that we talked about through the process earlier, and that's where it was. The other one, young man from the West Coast, he was on the East Coast, loved him, got him to stay a couple extra days for a visit. He loved the school, and that's how that process works. So it is a balance. It is a balance. I know some programs have said that they will always reserve a spot or 2 that they'll support their admissions from their days, from their prospect days. But every school is different. You're talking to when University of Richmond started the program, we had 15 guys that were uncommitted in their senior year that decided to jump on, and if you could spell lacrosse and you could walk on, you could get into school on your own. You end up being on a team that went to the NCAA tournament in their first year. So the process is different for everyone. Our roster is a mixture. Our roster is a mixture. Yes, sir. I heard online the fan was going. Could you speak up a little bit? The online. So you're an athlete and you fill out the online recruiting database. That gets us all the pertinent information on you that we store in our database. So if we need to know what high school coach to reach out to or what club events you're going to go to, that serves that need. Also, when you fill out those recruitment questionnaires online, send the coach an email. Okay, do something else to diversify yourself, because anybody can hit send. You didn't have to communicate with anybody. I know you want to do is text now, but like if you could send that email to the coach that, hey, I just filled this out, really interested. Leave a voicemail, give a phone call. That way, you're kind of the front of the line with name recognition for us. So a little thing that helps us. If you want to put in the headline of your email, just don't put lacrosse. Don't put something generic. Maybe say your name, your graduation year. Those are little things that help us with just name recognition with all the names that we see through a summer. So, yes, sir. What is Richmond? When do we form our lacrosse program? Putting a plug in for University of Richmond? I like you. You're all right. My boss, Coach Shamati, was hired in the fall of 2012. He had a year to recruit. We just finished our 3rd season. We've had seasons of 14, 15, and 16 seasons, and it's been a lot of fun. We'll say this. It's been a lot of fun recruiting and starting a program from scratch, something we only want to do once. So, but thank you for your question. Yes, ma'am. What are our... It can be done. You have to be very proactive in the high school films. We will never recruit a young man that we have not seen play live. We could have the coolest highlight video that has 20,000 views, but to be on the sideline and see that young man live in person is extremely important to us in the recruiting process, especially with bringing in smaller classes. So it can be done. You can get recruited by not going anywhere this summer. We have some guys that, it's tough to see them, but they only might be playing in 1 or 2 things. But those 1 or 2 things, if that young man's a priority for us, those events are a priority for us to go to and see that young man. But that's our perspective on the live evaluation versus the film evaluation. So, yes, ma'am.
What is the process for arranging a visit, whether it's official or unofficial?
All visits right now are unofficial. The official visit, the question was the difference of how to arrange an unofficial versus an official visit. The official visit is paid for by the institution. Typically in this day and age at Division I institutions, if they are done with their, say we were done with our 17 class, the official visit for us will be bringing all of those 17 graduates that are going to become part of our program. Official visit we pay for the travel. We pay for the flight, we pay for the train, we pay for the hotels for the family. That is what the official visit is, and that will not happen until the fall of the senior year. The unofficial visit is what all the visits are going on now, and the cost of that visit is paid for by the family. To arrange those, it is something as simple as a phone call, an email, getting in touch with those with the coaches. Some institutions hold more unofficial visits because they just want get as many people on their campus and show off their campus as they can. Others are very selective in who they invite for the unofficial visit. So that is going to differ from program to program. But the unofficial visit is paid for. That's what's going on by the family when you're talking to this coach. You really like this school. It looks great online. Let's load up the car. Let's drive down 29 up 95 again, and let's go see what the school is all about in person. So that's the That's the unofficial visit. So, yes, sir. Long stick middies. How many long stick middies do we recruit in a year? If you ask myself and defensive coordinator, we recruit defensemen. We recruit 3 defensemen, maybe 4. Because guys that can do a lot of different things are attractive to us. One of them will typically be maybe more focused on the long stick midi position versus the down low position. But we have a philosophy. I'm going to make another plug for Richmond. We like to play fast. We like the 10-man ride. We like to score goals with long poles as much as we do with the third midfielder that comes out of the box to sub in. So we always have somebody that can handle the ball pretty well and push offense for us. So, yes, sir. What do we look for in LSN and defenseman? Well, number one is athleticism. How your ability to run around, cover the ball. We also like our defensemen to actually play defense. I'm getting a lot of highlight films this day and age with it's a defenseman that's only scoring goals. So if you are a defenseman and you're really good handling the ball, make sure you got some opportunities on film that we showcase yourself covering the ball because they're that's all well and good, but we got to get stops before we can go push transition. So, it's footwork, it's stick work, it's just being an athlete and game understanding. So there's something for everybody. We had a guy this past year not cross the midline once. If we did, we called a timeout. So so we have those guys that play just down there as well. So, yes, ma'am.
As a coach, do you guys use any of the recruiting websites like eRecruit, NCSA? Do those play any kind of role in helping you evaluate?
The evaluation. Oh, yeah, thank you, sir. The question is, what role does the Be Recruited or the NCSSA, the ones I seen, the Get Big Lax, Connect Lax, more to name. But they serve a role. It's beneficial to us when you can have all that stuff, all the contact information, maybe even academic information compiled into one spot so that I now, if the process is going to move forward with a young man, can gain access to that, find the principal's number, things like that. Now, can you do all that with an email from Outlook or Gmail? You can. But the question earlier about film, having a 5-minute snapshot, however that film is materialized, that's extremely important for us to get us interested or remain interested. So, yes, ma'am.
In regard to the question of official versus unofficial visits,
Uh-huh.
when do those start? Does it differ between boys and girls?
I can't speak as to when the difference of boys and girls when those first unofficial comes. An unofficial visit can happen at any age. When you are rising freshman, rising sophomore, right? The unofficial visit, it is the same benefits of somebody that is not getting recruited to that institution. So it's just as simple as, I have my younger brother who didn't play a college sport and he went on visits. That's the same as that is an unofficial visit. He just didn't meet with a coaching staff. So you can do as many of those as you want. There's no restrictions on an unofficial visit, and you can start them at any time. It's the general college search process from our standpoint, or your standpoint from being a recruited student athlete. You just want to do what you can to try to get in front of that coach and arrange a little one-on-one meeting and learn a little bit more about the program like you would going through an admissions tour of the school. So, yes, sir.
What are the SAT and ACT requirements?
The question about the ACT and SAT requirements exclusively at the University of Richmond? Okay. We have an academic index where we get the SAT, the GPA, the SAT or the ACT, the GPA. That goes into a big formula. We're going to throw out all the electives. Getting an A plus in gym, I was good at, but that's not gonna give you a boost on some of the core requirements that our admissions and our compliance office will look at. We take all those, we put them in a formula, and that's going to spit you out an academic index reading of whether we're going to support or cannot support. We've had guys that have had a 27 ACT and a 3.8 GPA. We've had guys with a 3.3 GPA and a 31 ACT. Some can be a little bit lower, maybe, but it's different every year. And all that, you can have a 4.0, but have never taken an AP. It's going to look different than a 4.0 with the major electives and getting more core courses. So, yes, sir.
Does the school have different views on, say, you've got two goalies? One kid's a PG versus one kid who's on track to graduate on time.
The question is does it make it? Correct me if I'm wrong. Do we value it differently about being a PG or a 4-year graduating member from high school? Yeah. To us, it doesn't matter. When you graduate from high school is when you graduate from high school. We've never asked an athlete to do an extra year. Some programs might because they really, really want that athlete, but they might have already committed that left-handed attackman, like the question earlier, so they want him to be a left-handed attackman in the next class. Every school is going to be different on how they value recruiting a physically older guy, but University of Richmond, we do not. We do not. If we're interested in you, we're interested in you now. So rather have you come in now instead of later. But yeah, again.
Would you rather have a student athlete with a very good athlete but with lower grades, or a player with higher grades and lower?
Are you asking about what carries more weight, the transcript or the test score? It's being a student athlete, one doesn't weigh more than the other. If anything, being a student, as you're going to school, I mentioned to you earlier, you're going to school to play lacrosse for 4 years. You're going to school to be a student for 40 years. So what you do in the classroom is going to weigh much, much more than where you are, as an athlete, because I say this to young men as well. What's going to happen if on the first day of your fall ball tournament, you tear your ACL? Are you going to be happy at that institution? We hope that you've gone through the process and have been selective, and you have driven the process, that you would be happy at that institution. And because lacrosse can go away in a second. Lacrosse can go away with just a really weird injury, with a really bad day. Would you be happy at that institution that you want to strive to get a diploma from? That should drive that carries the weight. So, yes, sir. The question about how do I feel about youth playing up in age level, that is it doesn't really change any view on how we feel the young man. I will say this: when I go and sit down at a field at the nature of recruiting events these days, and I sit down in a field that is I'm expecting to see all 2017s. If there's a 2018 on that team, and he wants to get recruited as a 2018, and he's not playing for the 2018 of that club or that age group, he might be getting missed by the institutions that are recruiting 2018s, if that makes sense. So we do our homework after the event and saying, hey, this young man was playing down an age group. We saw him play. We got to keep track of him. But if you want to get recruited as a 2018, I would recommend stay on the 2018 fields, because that's the coaches that are recruiting those ages. They're going to go to those fields. So now when it comes to practice and playing a higher level of competition, go for it. Play the best competition you can. That's only going to develop you as the athlete. But if from a recruiting perspective, staying on your age group, that's how we make our plans when we go to all these different fields and see who we need to see. So, yes, sir. Midfielder skills. Midfielder skills is going to differ from program to program. Number one, I would say for us, you look at athleticism, but we also know that we can't have guys that just can run through walls. You might have to have a guy that can pass it a little bit. So I love circling notes to say this man, he draws a slide, he passes the ball, and he's got 18 assists and 40 and 1 goal. Everybody, there's a skill set. That's one thing I love about lacrosse. This is not a recruiting conversation. There's something for everybody out there. You know, there's first team All-American attackmen that have been 5'6", you know, and then there's you know, All-American goalies that are 260 pounds. You know, they just find a way, as long as you continue to develop a skill set, to continue to develop practice, you know, and market yourself. There's something for everybody. I say this every event I get to coach. Let's say you're the best player for Team Virginia, in the Team Virginia right now. And how many games you played? You play 5 or 6? 6 games? So you're the best midi. You're having a really, really good day. You took 5 shots a day. Over 3 days, you played 6 games. You took 30 shots at the event. If you really, really want to be a great midi and can score, you can take a bucket of balls and get 130 shots in an afternoon in your backyard. You know, and you need to continue to invest in yourself in the classroom and on the field as well. Okay, I say it to every young man that I get to coach at these events. You want to be the best lacrosse player? You need to practice lacrosse, and you can take 100 shots in the backyard in 20 minutes, you know, or you could take 30 and playing in 3 games. These are excellent for getting showcased, but if like we tell our young men, we need to keep developing the fundamentals, even from our guys, 18 to 22-year-olds, because at the end of the day, when the play doesn't work, what are you going to lie back? What are you going to fall back on? So. Yeah, two-handed. I mean, if you can score 150 goals with your one hand, I'm not going to tell you to put in your right hand. I'm not going to tell you to put in your left. But you being able to showcase both hands only diversifies you a little bit. But one more question, yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about how you track athletes over the course of their high school career? So maybe you get your first interaction through an inquiry or a highlight video when they're, you know, 5-year freshmen, and then, you know, you've identified that person in your database, and then over time, maybe you're getting a number of additional inquiries or updated highlight videos. Can you talk about that process of tracking?
The process of tracking an athlete through their high school career. Well, when we have an interest in something, when we're interested in an athlete, what we want to do is we kind of want to know where they're going to be and what are they doing. Now that then goes back on the athlete of saying, hey, coach, you know, I just finished up my sophomore year at, I'll use my alma mater, Hereford High School. I'm going to be at these events. Here's my film my sophomore season. And then a fall schedule comes out, or I'm playing here. Hey, I scored 3 touchdowns in last night's football game. You know, that information is how we track it. We will request the guys that we recruit to continue to update us on what they're doing in the classroom and what they're doing athletically, and that just gives us more information for recruiting down the line. So especially at the earlier ages, it's on the onus of the athlete to keep us informed, because we can't call them, but when we do talk, we say, keep us updated, send me that film. I can't wait to see you play your football game on Friday night. So that's how we track it. Yes, sir.
You're saying you go to somebody's football game?
Yeah. Yeah, we like athletes. I've been to football games, been to hockey games, I've been to soccer games, but that's what we value, and that's what I value, because you also like to recruit who you were a little bit, and so we have a little bit of that in us. Basketball games, so makes it fun. So I will go one more question because it's coming up on noon. I'll go 2. I got 2. I'm a nice guy. Here we go.
Recommendations for athletes that maybe they're geographically challenged, like we're in the middle of the United States, most of the schools we're looking at are on this side of the
Wonderful, wonderful question. Recommendations for athletes maybe in a non-traditional area and how to get seen or how to get on campus at some of these East Coast places. Is that, I would say that, you go to the right events. You know, like I said, go on those camp events that you're thinking about going to. See where the coaches have historically been. Talk to other people that might have already been through the process. Where are the best ones to go through? That way you're going to get the most bang for your buck on getting seen. And then in your time there, if you're in Philadelphia and you got 2 extra days and you can see Drexel, St. Joe's, Cabrini, and you can see all those schools, I would say that's the most bang for your buck. I've not been in that situation. I would try to not just make traveling for the recruiting event just about the recruiting event, when there's opportunity, when you're so close, to go see the difference of a University of Richmond and the difference of a UVA. They're two very different campuses. They're two very good schools, but they're very different campuses, and you can get them both done in a day. That would be my recommendation. So, and yes, sir.
Can you talk about your experience both as a player and a coach? Talk about two categories. The top recruit who came in and really did his work out for him on the field, and then a late recruit who came in and surprised the players and the coaches on the outside. What happened in these situations?
Okay. The question was about the difference of a just going from recruit to on-field athlete. I started to smile when you were saying this, because if the recruiting process if it was what it is when I went through it, I don't know if I'm up here today. Yeah, because I was more of the late bloomer. In our sport, those that go to schools late, or they get recruited late, getting to the institution is one thing. It's what you do when you get there, young guys and young girls. Because when mom and dad are going to drop you off and drive away, it's how you're going to manage, your time. It's how you're going to it's the work you're going to do when you don't have a coach telling you what to do. Everybody in the country gets better from 2 to 4. The All-Americans are hitting a bucket of balls at 10 a.m., when they have an hour break between class. Or they're studying so they know that they don't have to even worry about their test that they have to take in the afternoon, when they have practice around. So it's what you do when you get there, and it is not uncommon to find those late bloomers that that it might have been overlooked, and then they go and overachieve when they get to college. So we look for that. That's why we're a little bit later in the game with some of the stuff. But then the other younger guys that are doing the multiple sports, when you focus all that time and energy and adjust men's lacrosse when you go to school, then you're going to just develop hopefully exponentially as a lacrosse athlete. That's different for everyone. You could be the number 1 recruit in the country and end up being a first-team All-American when you graduate. You could be somebody that's been overlooked and end up being right next to the guy. It's what you do when you get there, and that's why I'm a big believer that the more experiences you can give yourself, especially the younger guys in the room, the experiences of playing street hockey in the neighborhood, to doing something outside of the classroom but off the lacrosse field, that's only going to make you a better student athlete, and knowing how to manage your time, how to have more experiences to fall back on when mom and dad drop you off and you're in a dorm room with like 100 other guys. So I continue. If I want to wrap this up, yes, ma'am. What?
Okay, one last question. How do you know, you said earlier that you should go to the events where historically coaches have been. How do you find that out?
The event websites typically have a list of college coaches that are committed to attend this year or have committed last year. Or I would recommend you have schools 1 through 5 on the top of your list. Email 1 through 5 saying, what events are you going to go to? Or I'm going to go to this, will you be there? So I continue to say this. I'll end with this. Make the process student athlete driven, okay? Give yourself experiences that are going to diversify against the person next to you. And, this should be fun. Young men and young women, this is only going to happen one time in your life. Try to enjoy it, and you got to thank mom and dad for all the smelly pads that they've schlepped around the East Coast and investing in your guys' future. You guys should take ownership of the process as well, because it is your future that your parents are investing in. Take ownership of your future through the search process and helping out and raking some leaves to pay for some of these events every now and then. So, but again, my name is Chris Perzinski. I'm an assistant coach at the University of Richmond. I was glad to take a little bit extra time today, and thank you for your patience with me.